The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are webcasting to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. So thrilled to be here. This is the new home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We're thrilled to be here with you on a Wednesday morning. You know I love Wednesdays because in the first hour, we have a segment called Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet is here with us live, and she's going to be answering your questions in just a moment. Thrilled to have her here. And then in our second hour, it's Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspaw-Jackson from Autism Care and Treatment joins me for that hour. And today's special guest, the next in our series of interviews that we're doing called Autism Family Portraits, our guest today is Bryce Myler. You have heard us talk about Bryce Myler in many different ways on this show before. She's an amazing autism mom. She is the mother of a son who is featured, and she's actually featured as well on the film Recovered, because her son recovered from autism. I know that that's a very incendiary term to a lot of people, but we'll be talking about that term and what that term means during the next hour with Bryce. Bryce is also now, she wasn't at the time, but she is now the head of the contracts department for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So you've heard us talk about her before when we talk about if you're trying to figure out what your benefits are, how to be able to access benefits. We usually refer you to Bryce because she's the expert in that field. She was an expert in insurance long before she was an expert in being an autism mom, but now she's both. And we all get to benefit from that, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So Bryce has always been an inspiration to me, and I know she is to Nancy, and we'll be thrilled to share her story with you a little bit later in the second hour today. But in the meantime, as I said, in just a few minutes, we're going to be doing Ask Dr. Doreen. And in both segments of the show today, first hour and second hour, we want you to participate with us. We want you to interact and be a part of the conversation because that's what this whole show is about. So Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can interact, some of the different ways that you can get in touch with us, some of the different ways you can be watching the show. While he does that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. Check that out. There's so many things to do on that page. If you click on the triangle on the computer screen, you can be watching the live show or the most recently recorded live show. If you go to the upper left-hand corner of that screen, you'll find a little memo tab up there. If you click on that, you can watch any one of the most recent 100 shows are there. Now, to the side of all that is the live feature. If you put your cursor in the box that says your question, just start typing, hit enter, and it will show up here on my screen. And in that way, I can be talking with you and I can relay, yes. Kelby's talking to me. So that's why I'm saying yes, just randomly. In any case, you can send your question in, and I can repeat that to our experts, and it's a wonderful, wonderful feature. It's free. You don't have to log in. There's no username, no password needed. That's all you have to do is type and hit enter, and I love that about that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it's going to be time for Ask Dr. Doreen. Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, There are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing, and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Oh, welcome back. Are we here, Kelby? I guess we are. I did not know that we were back, and I just been sitting here being silly this morning. In any case, thank you so much for being with us. It is time for Ask Dr. Doreen. We have Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet here with us. Thank you for being here this morning.
It's
and
a
thank
pleasure.
you for being here every Wednesday morning.
Thank
we
you.
love this time with
Thank you. I do too.
It's so thrilling. For those of you who don't know Dr. Graham-Pichet, I want you to know that she is an amazing expert in the field of autism. More than that, she's a visionary in this field. She has been working in this field for 30 plus years, helping families, helping individuals who are on the autism spectrum, and working with a full range. This is a huge spectrum, and I think sometimes people go, oh, well, do they work with small kids? Do they work with teens? Do they work with adults? And you've done it all.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you stay in the field long enough, you end up learning a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely, but we appreciate this time to be with you. We like to remind everybody at the start of the show that there is no expert who can give individual specific advice in this format. That would be a disservice to that individual, right? But we love it when you write in questions, and the more specific you are, the better, but because it gives us an opportunity to sort of take a walking tour through Dr. Graham-Pichet's brain and with all the knowledge that she knows. It's like the open book of Dr. Graham-Pichet's brain, so that we can ask her, what she knows about this. It's really fascinating, the things that we learn just through the questions that you guys ask. I love being here, and I know you, the viewers, write all the time and say thank you so much. So thank you for taking the time to do this. It's a pleasure. When we were first starting out with autism, if I had had the opportunity to just ask you questions, oh my gosh, just invaluable.
It's such a tough time that when you're first starting out in autism, it's such a sort of an enigma, and it's so scary. I always tell my new supervisor trainees that they really need to respect and honor parents as they go through this, because it's so far beyond my imagination of how you would cope with something like this. Not only is it, scary in terms of nobody really tells you what it is. There's so many different understandings of what autism is. But it's also scary because most people still tell you it's definitely lifelong, and it just shatters parents, I think, from the get-go. And it's my role, just being able to help people understand that it isn't really lifelong necessarily, and it is very It's a different kind of life, but it's a very good life, and that we just have to not be afraid of it and break it down and
Right.
try to approach it at different segments. You know, that's I'm glad to be able to do that. I'm happy to be able to do that.
Thrilled.
I see you have my film here today.
Yes, because Bryce is going to be on the show, and so we're going to be talking. I mean, I know this is a very controversial topic, recovery and
Right,
recovery
right.
from autism.
Right,
Very controversial word.
right.
But this is an amazing film. I
Yeah,
think it's
thank
a
you very
life-changing
much.
film for families to be able to watch and see. I personally, we just filmed the other day with Nick, who's featured in the movie. I want to be able to catch up with all 4 of these individuals in the next few months, so that you can. It's kind of like 7 Up to me, that film series 7 Up.
Yeah.
That, you know, first they talk to the kids when they're 7, and then they come back every 7 years. Well, in this film, you get to see kids who are just at the point where they're starting out therapy, and in that first
Or
year.
in therapy, or
Exactly.
in the first few years. Like, I'm trying
Yeah.
to think of the videos. I think each of the kids were in therapy already, the early videos, but at least a year or 2 years when we
Really?
videotaped.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you get to see them as teenagers,
Right.
and 3 of the 4 I know personally as adults, and I'm dying to meet the 4th, and it's amazing
Right.
to know as a parent that these are the possibilities,
Right.
and it's just one, you know, 4 of the possibilities out of infinite possibilities. To me, really, I think supercharged us to have even more hope when things got
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
To remember this is what's possible, and I don't think you get to see that too many. Although we do try to showcase that here on the show as much as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, and in the Mission Possible series and all the things that
Yes.
you guys do, we have so many kids now who have recovered, and we still, the world is probably, I'd say maybe like more like 30% out there. People are beginning to accept the fact that recovery exists. But it's astonishing that we said, the first time we said recovery happens is 1987. And if you think about in the original publication, and if you think about that, and the fact that we're in 2016, almost 30 years later, it's pretty crazy that people that still there's all this question about it. And it's really important, I think, Shannon. First of all, a couple of things, if I can take a minute to talk
Yes,
about this
absolutely.
film, because it also came up in my life yesterday again. I'm becoming more and more proud of it as time goes on. I'm so glad that we did it. It was one of those things that it wasn't meant to be what it is. I taped my children there because this was early on. I think I started taping them, like, let's say, I don't know, maybe literally, 25 years ago or more. It was very early on, and I had realized that I couldn't catch up with the wait list and the demand. I mean, I was getting calls from parents all over the world, and there was no way I could help everyone. I mean, I just didn't have resources, didn't have staff. Now, for me, the biggest blessing of CARD is the ability to be able to reach so many people, and that is just spectacular for me. But back then, it was just really, really difficult. First of all, we didn't have things like FaceTime or Skype or whatever. We didn't have internet connection. We had just the ability to talk to people and then fly out and see them, and it was very difficult. But so when I started taping these kids, it was only for the purpose of producing training tapes. I intended, we had originally at UCLA many years ago, there was a series of training tapes that had been done, and I had always thought it would be good to update these tapes and do new training tapes. So my idea was to work on teaching the children things like reading or prepositions, pronouns, I don't know, verbal imitation, whatever, and take all the lessons and just show them by video to parents so that they could just look at the video and figure out how to do it. And then, so I taped, and then I kind of got really, really busy with a million other things, like not only opening offices, but then I realized I really need to kind of train people on the procedures of ABA if they're going to use these, and I need to write out every lesson, and like nothing had been done, nothing. There was no written curriculum, nothing. So I got distracted, and then it was 80 hours of footage, 80 something hours, like 83 hours or so, and then they basically were with a studio where we had taped the children, or the studio had helped, these production people had gone out and taped our kids.
Right.
And the studio was shutting down. This is how much longer it is. They said, we got to give you these tapes back. I was like, okay, and we had already paid for it, and I felt so bad because in those days it was like $20,000 we paid for this videotaping, and it was a lot of money to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to do something with this stuff. So I was very fortunate that Michelle Jacques, who's the person who directed it and worked on editing it and all this. Michelle was at that time a therapist in our Torrance office, and I met her, and she was also teaching film editing. And then I got together with her, and she would come to my office, and she was very diligent, and I still miss Michelle. She's a wonderful person. She would come to my office, and we'd sit there for an hour, 2 hours, or maybe actually half days or full days even, maybe once a month, once every 2 months, whenever I could fit it in, for over a year.
Wow.
And we'd cut these videos. And so what happened is, because it was so much later, when we got back in touch with these families, we realized, oh my gosh, we need to videotape where they are now.
Yeah.
And so it became this pre-post thing, which wasn't intended to be.
Interesting.
And it turned out to be such a great film.
Oh, it's such a great thing to be able to see. It was really a guiding light for me. And we'll talk more about this when we have Bryce, because Bryce was, in particular, her story touched me so deeply and made me sob. I couldn't even, we have a clip that we're going to show later. Even yesterday when I was going over it with Kelby, I had to leave the room. I got so emotional because it gave me so much hope. And that's really, we all say you can't buy hope. You can't. But this is one way you can get it. It's recovered and it's available. You can get it on Amazon. You can go and watch it today on Amazon. So in any case, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Again, we'll have a video coming up soon with Nick, and then and we're having Bryce on today, Brett's mom, and we'll talk more about the other two on other days. I want to jump in to some questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure, sure.
One that came in yesterday from two new parents that I'm really getting to know, and so I want to thank them for writing in. Hi, Shannon. I would like to ask Dr. Doreen about strategies for having blood drawn. Our Fremont son is 5 years old with moderate autism and limited verbal communication skills. Our previous attempts at getting his blood drawn have ended with Dad holding him down. He's developing an aversion to doctors, and we worry about even getting through the door this time. Any suggestions would be helpful. And again, they receive services at the Fremont office, and I've had the opportunity to talk with these parents, and I love them. They're
That's
just
awesome.
amazing parents.
That's fabulous. I would love to find out who their supervisor is so I can directly talk to the supervisor and give them some feedback. But generally, I actually have a really good, very detailed presentation I've done in the past on the subject of shots and doctors' offices in general. You need a little bit of time, like maybe a month, and to do this, but it's not that hard. It's pretty easy. And it's essentially, it's a sort of desensitization procedure. It's systematic desensitization. And what you're doing is, it's a feared thing, right? So any child, it's a feared process. So definitely you want to be doing it over a shaping process. So it's not something you do suddenly. You can, that's called flooding, what you've done already. Flooding can be very traumatic. Flooding is basically putting the individual in the situation and just letting them deal with it, you know? And that's a pretty traumatic process. Sometimes it's done when it's necessary to be done, and it is what it is, and then all you can do is just try to reinforce the individual for coping.
And sometimes when it's a blood drawing, you don't know it's coming.
You just don't know what to do.
You don't have time to prep
But
for it.
once you go through this systematic desensitization procedure, it's done and you have it for life. Like it is something that where the child will no longer fear, that they'll be prepared for things like injections and blood draws much better.
Yeah.
So what you do is you will want to itemize every single step of a blood draw. And when I say every single step, we're talking about, driving. It probably starts with driving to the doctor's office, right? And I don't know if your child knows, maybe they recognize the building. It's from the point where any kind of anxiety would begin.
Okay.
Okay, so Driving to the doctor's office is one. Next one is, let's say, getting out of the car and going in. Next one would be like getting in the elevator and going upstairs. Next one would be actually waiting in the waiting room. Next one would be going in and sitting or seeing the doctor. Next one might be sitting in the chair. Next one might be putting the elastic around, let's say the tourniquet around your arm, or even just opening your arm like that, putting your sleeve up, something, I don't know. Putting the tourniquet on, and then actually the next one would be, I'm listing them as more and more traumatic, right? So then the next one would be, let's say, the person coming, maybe manipulating the needles or all the things that he's doing. The next one would be maybe putting rubbing alcohol there, and then finally would be the actual puncture. And then sitting there for a duration of time so they can put the bottle. So you split it up, and then what you do is you start with the least traumatic, which would be driving to the doctor's office, right? As you approach the thing, it gets more and more traumatic. So you put all of these on a list with the least traumatic at the beginning and the most traumatic at the end, and it could be 20 steps. It doesn't really matter. And each of those now, you will want to expose the child to each of those and pair the exposure with relaxation and high level of reinforcement. So now you can do this in two ways, and I suggest you do it visually first and then in vivo. So what you would do is you would take photos of certain key things. So you take photos of the doctor's office, see if that provokes any kind of anxiety in your child. Like, do they recognize it? Take a photo of the doctor, take a photo of the waiting room, take a photo of the chair, take a photo of someone sitting in the chair. Ideally, take a photo of the child sitting in the chair, but whatever you can. Take a photo of a tourniquet on someone's arm. Everything that is a stimulus that's, and then go through. And so you do all this, you produce these steps. Now you have a series of steps that are pictures and visual steps, and then you have a series of steps which are actual in vivo, which means the person doing each step. So you put that aside for a minute, and then step two of doing a systematic desensitization is to teach the individual some form of behavior that's contrary to anxiety. So this would be either it would be breathing exercises, which we do in your child's 5 and moderate. So you could do this, which is essentially 1. Just counting and breathing, because if you get a lot of oxygen, you're not going to be hyper anxious. You're going to calm down a little bit. Other techniques that work very, very well with our kids that are contrary to anxiety are music, like sound noise reduction headphones that allow you to just have silence and be able to listen to something you like. That's very helpful. Any kind of visual distraction. This is why when you go to a dentist, for instance, they have TV monitors now, right? So let's say your favorite cartoon or whatever, something that's a distraction. These are all your tools for helping the individual cope. So you have a series of these things, which are like relaxation, huge reinforcers, distracting reinforcers, food items, whatever, things that will completely allow the person to cope. And then you have this series of stimuli that are anxiety and fear-provoking. And you pair them starting with the least fear-provoking. So for instance, you would, let's say your child recognizes the picture of the office. So you'll show the picture and then just have the picture present. And if the child starts to have anxious reaction, then you will prompt the child to do one of those breathing exercises, let's say, or to take their headphones and put it on, and they're fine with it. And you keep going up, and you will eventually, let's say, assume you're doing pictures only, you will eventually get to a point where it produces a reaction in the child. So for instance, let's say if you have a picture of a person in the chair with a tourniquet on there, and the person, the phlebotomist trying to draw blood, that most likely will cause some sort of anxiety or phobia in the child. And when that does, you just leave the picture there and you practice the breathing, and you tell the child, do you want something to drink? Do you want something to eat? Do you want to listen to music? Whatever it is. And you help them find a distraction that's also calming. And when they're completely fine with it, where they couldn't care less, you take the picture away, you represent it multiple times, and you make sure they're very fine with it, and then you go to the next level. Okay. And when you've done all the visuals, you want to start doing the actual in vivo, obviously, which means driving to the location. Go as far as you can with the child. Now, the child has to have become very good at administering reinforcer and distractor. That's a very important skill you can teach your child, not just for this, for everything. Teaching our children to give themselves, to regulate themselves, to give themselves reinforcers and to give themselves calming exercises, to give themselves headphones when it's overstimulating, to give themselves sunglasses when the lights are to give themselves self-regulating, calming things is a huge value anyway. Yeah. So your child assumedly has done that now, and now you'll go to a point of like, go as far as you can. Like, talk to the doctor, obviously, and tell them you're doing training. And then go to the waiting room, go inside. A lot of times these phlebotomists, the chair is empty, so you could just go there, practice sitting there, and don't go further. Stop at where it is anxiety provoking and get that stage dealt with. Right. And when that stage is calm and acceptable, go to the next stage. Now, there's one step prior to the injection that you can actually, prior to the blood draw, the puncture, that you can practice at home, which is use a pen to instead of the needle. Use it without the tip out first and just practice it. Just press. So let the child become familiar with this sensation of actually pressing a small object on their skin, and the smaller the better. And that will help as well. To add that step in, that will really, really help.
Absolutely. I feel like it's strange. I'm having a memory of us doing some of this with Jem. Okay. Which I had totally, when we started this question, I didn't remember this, but I remember doing some of that with therapists, and they also had me get one of those play medical kits and have him do that to us. Yes, so absolutely. It was a little needle, and he would come and do it to me, and I would have a non-reaction. Totally. And we just had blood draw on the other. I totally had forgotten about this because I was like, oh, this really isn't our thing, but it had been at one point. And he had blood drawn the other day, and it was such a non-event
issue for him. Yeah. Yeah. Fear is more in our heads than something. I mean, obviously, there are certain kids go through certain procedures that are horrendous, but this type of thing is just more about what it's made up fear. It's not really a painful event. It's not a significantly painful thing. A blood draw is one prick. Yeah. And so it's not that big, but kids are often just not familiar. They don't know what's coming. Oh, yeah. Like I didn't vaccinate my kids for the longest time, and so one of my kids, Charlie, she was, I guess, 12 or something when we did her first blood draw. And she'd never been in any way punctured, right? And she was like terrified of the whole thing. And then she just sat there and she was like, well, that was nothing. And I was like, yeah, it's totally in your head. You just get so scared about it.
It's very interesting. Okay, well, great. And if you want to know more information, if they want to see the presentation that you've done on that, is there a possibility we can hook them up with that?
Absolutely. Okay. I can actually try to find that PowerPoint. I have it and send it to you. That particular presentation is not just about injections, it's also about pill swallowing. Okay. So it does medical procedures. So it's great. Blood draw and pill swallowing.
And in the meantime, if you would write and tell us who your supervisor is, so that we can let Dr. Granpeesheh know that. Right. Thank you so much for writing into us. We're going to take a break now, and then we're going to come back with some more questions. So stick with us for more Ask Dr. Doreen.
Hi everyone, welcome back. For the month of March, we're going to be making a rain stick. And what's really cool about this project is that the steps are pretty simple, so your kids are going to be able to practice a lot of their fine motor skills when making it. Another bonus is that once the rain stick is completed, you guys can use it for a bunch of different programs under cognition and executive functions, things that deals with seeing versus hearing, or using it also for auditory memory. But we'll get to that later. First, we gotta make the rain stick. So, The materials you'll be needing are a paper towel roll, tape, paper, aluminum foil, rice, and any kind of materials you want to use to decorate your rain stick with. All right, let's get to it. So the first thing you want to do is get a piece of tin foil that's about double the length as your paper towel roll. I got this, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it up like so, and I'm going to wrap my paper towel roll with it. Okay, and don't worry if it's too messy, okay? This is to give us a basic shape. Now once I've got this, I'm gonna make it a little bit tighter, and I'm gonna roll it and stick it inside of my paper towel roll. I wanna make sure that it goes all the way through the paper towel roll, and what this does, it acts like a buffer so the rice will go down slowly through the tube. And see how that's in nice and in there? Okay, now that I have that, I'm gonna take a piece of paper and cover one side. And I'm gonna take a piece of tape and secure it over the bottom. All right, now that I've got this on, I'm gonna take my rice and pour it in. All right, now that I got the rice in there, I'm gonna seal the other side. Now that this is constructed, don't forget to use your imagination to decorate this any way that you want. And here's my finished rain stick. Don't forget you can decorate yours however you see fit. I decided to use tape and pipe cleaners, but you could always paint it, add sparkles, just whatever you feel like doing. Now that this is done, let's take a listen to it. What does that sound like to you? I think it sounds like rain too. What does rain look like? Ah, that is what rain looks like. You can ask them a whole bunch of different questions using this after it's already been made. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye guys.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grampichet. She's answering your questions in real time. I want to go to another question. Somebody wrote in and said, "Hi, thanks for your time. I'm a regular follower of your show. I have a 2.5-year-old who grinds his teeth when he is awake. Not all the time, but sometimes. And he stopped it for some time, but again started before we used a vibrating toothbrush and crunchy stuff when he grinds his teeth. Please suggest something that he can to stop it completely."
Yeah. It's difficult. You have to. Okay, so the behavioral way to deal with this, and then I'll tell you kind of an easier way. But the behavioral way to deal with this is to count the number of times he does grind his teeth in an hour or throughout the course of the day if you want to be really accurate. So let's say you count the number of times he grinds his teeth throughout the course of the day, and it ends up being once every 20 minutes. I don't know, whatever it is. It's your baseline. That's your baseline. And so then what you're doing is you're going to be reinforcing non-occurrence of the behavior. So what you'll do is you will, and sometimes, let's say the first time you measure how often he does it, and it's once every 20 minutes, and then you measure it on another day, and it's once every 15 minutes, or it's variable. Let's say if it's like completely variable, he'll do it at 15 minutes, then he'll do it for another hour. Then what you do is you average it out, and you basically get an average concept of, okay, so on the average, he's doing it every 15 minutes or something. And sometimes when you start intervention, which is the reinforcing of non-occurrence of it, it might be even more frequent. So don't worry if your baseline becomes pretty frequent. But whatever is your baseline, whatever the frequency is that he does it at, you will start to reinforce him like 10 seconds or 1 minute after that, and make sure that he is not, and just really make a huge deal about it, like good job and so on. Now, if it happens during your period of time waiting, then you have to restart it, of course, and then start again. Now, that's the behavioral procedure, and it takes a really long time, and it's because you will have to shape it up and increase it from, let's say, 10 minutes to an hour to a day. It's just a very, very long procedure. The easier thing to do is to prevent it from happening, which means go see a dentist and get a mouth guard for him.
Okay.
They're very similar to, they make these mouth guards for kids for sleep time, but you could easily put the mouth guard in at times where you feel like he's about to grind. And if he keeps it in, quite honestly, the habit will be broken. The habit of grinding will be broken. It's a habit. So, and also the other thing is if he has it in, it might be good to help massage his muscles here. These trigeminal muscles are the reason people do that with their teeth or move their jaw back and forth, is because they're trying to strain these muscles or stretch the muscles. So try to massage these muscles, but a mouth guard will prevent it and it'll break the habit.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I love that. We had a lot of people who were writing in live. I just want to say somebody, Mike, our wonderful friend Mike, wrote in and said, could we please put this on Netflix, because they'd like to be able to watch it on Netflix. That's something we've been looking at for a long, long time.
Gosh, I don't even remember why we didn't.
Because, can I tell you, because I
Yes,
was one of the
please,
people on the
please.
committee that Netflix had a rule at the time that if it was a movie and it was a documentary, it had to be over 60 minutes, and it's 58 minutes. Now, we should look at it again, because I know Netflix was talking about expanding that rule, but that was why. But you know what, Mike? I will look at that today to see if Netflix has changed. It was just a rule, and a lot of people were complaining about it, so we'll see if they've changed it. But that's why it's not on Netflix.
Yeah, thank
Isn't that
you.
crazy?
We'll try to, and we might also want to look at Hulu as another option. I guess.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank
But
you.
you can watch it on Amazon. Okay, next question. I have a student who is nonverbal and screams quite often. Recently, she has started to scratch and dig her nails purposely. The adult's hands and her mother's hands. The child will do this through excitement or anger. How do we help her to stop digging her nails?
That's terrible. Okay, so we have to figure out why. Okay, so there's two behaviors here. One is screaming and one is scratching and digging her nails into people's hands. We have to figure out what the function is of each one. The writer is asking only about the scratching and digging, so we'll talk about that. And it may appear that they're doing it when they're excited or angry, but and it could very well be that both functions exist, but you would really need to have someone do an FBA, and a functional assessment is very important to be able to tell the scenarios under which it exactly happens and also how the behavior occurs. So, what are the things? List all the times that the child does this and list exactly what happened before it and how it was handled, what happened after it, because it could also be consequence maintained. So let's make sure we figure that out. Now, assuming the child might do it when, or the student might do it when, let's say, a demand is placed and they don't really want to do that and they'll do it, or they're angry about something and they'll press and so on and so forth. You really need to identify the function. The function always identifies the intervention. So if the function is excitement, we're going to have a completely different intervention than if the function is anger. So, and if it's both, we're going to have to identify the situations where it's excitement, deal with them one way, and where it's anger and deal with them a completely different way. So I don't want to give you a lot of feedback on how to deal with it until we know what the function is.
And this person said that it's a student of theirs, so I'm hoping that they have a BCBA who works with the school who could come in and do that FBA.
Right, absolutely, you should. I mean, most schools have a resource department and have a behavior analyst who can do an FBA. And otherwise request that, because you need to have that. I mean, and it's important to have that, because if someone does that from excitement, I mean, if someone does that from excitement, then in some ways it's okay, and they're just seeking out the sensory aspect of it, or it's the student's way of sharing their excitement. It's almost like, let's say if two people win something, they might hug each other and go, yay, you know, so it's kind of a sharing or expressing to that. And that's something that could easily be redirected to, let's say, pressing someone's hands in excitement. Right. Whereas if someone is doing this behavior from anger, that's a completely different behavior. And I wouldn't want to allow that to continue. And I'd want to teach her a form of requesting that replaces that. Yeah. And this is a nonverbal child or a student, and that is incredibly important to have some form of communication for this student, because without the communication ability, we don't know what they want, we don't know what they're trying to communicate to us. So, you know, more importantly, and I always tell people this, if you can, when you have someone who doesn't have communication, you're either really lucky in that they're very passive and in some cases medicated and don't have too many needs, or they don't express too many needs, or they will have a lot of needs and we don't know what they are. Now, very rare circumstances, you'll have a parent around who always predicts the individual's needs and they keep them happy. Yeah. In real life, that doesn't happen. We get frustrated when we can't express ourselves. So you can either deal with each episode of challenging behavior, and you could do that forever, or you can teach the individual communication, and it will, in the long term, really decrease all the challenging behaviors, because the challenging behaviors are just a way to communicate, you know. For instance, in this case, the student might be saying, wow, that's so exciting, or get away from me, I don't want to do this. Right. Or, like, I hate this skill, this specific lesson, or whatever, I'm tired right now, whatever it is, you know, and it's communication. So it's very important to realize that teaching communication is really the thing that's necessary here. And the fact that the student is nonverbal doesn't change anything. You can absolutely start a PECS program for this individual. You can teach them on an augmentative device. You can teach them reading, keyboarding. You can teach them Proloquo on an iPad. There's a multitude of things to do to help people communicate.
Okay, great. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and rapid fire through as many questions as we can, because so many are being written in right now. Stick with us. More Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of this is with all the accomplishments over the last 20 years. I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, you know, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago. There were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, you know. And at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, you know, for me, it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads, it is just, and I feel like, there's no way I would ever really know because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in first grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. I like to go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Grampy Shay. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Grampy Shay.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grampichet is here with us live answering your questions, and we're going to try to rapid fire and we've got about 10 minutes, so we're going to try to get through as many as we can. I'm going to talk less.
I'm talkative today. I'm sorry.
And it's wonderful when you talk. I need to shut up, and I will. Okay, hi, I love your show. How do I work, and we love you, how do I work on processing speed and working memory? Can you give me some practical ideas to work on these areas? He has scored low in these areas, and thanks for your thoughts.
So those are the two areas that a lot of people have issues with. Look at another one down here.
Yes.
It's the same thing,
Yes.
processing speed and working memory. And I have another child right now who's having issues with processing speed and working memory. They're both practice. We have, here's the short answer. We have activities, lessons for both of these in our cognition curriculum, maybe also in our executive functioning curriculum, but definitely in our cognition curriculum in skills. So go to skillsforautism.com. There you go.
I have my little reminder thing because I can never remember the phone number. 877-975-4559 is the phone number. And there's skillsforautism.com. And it's FOR autism.com. But the phone number is 877-975-4559. And they actually have someone who can help talk you through stuff as well. Amazing woman that we've had on the show before, Robin Hogerheis. So check it out. Those lessons are amazing.
Yeah, and don't be afraid. These tend to be the two big areas for our kids.
Okay. Moving on, my 14-year-old daughter is still not potty trained. We've come close, but she is in a diaper every day. I would love, all in capitals, for her to be toilet trained. Where do we begin? She's nonverbal and still has a lot of challenging behavior, self-injurious behavior, aggression, disruption. She is independent, pulling her pants down and sitting on the toilet. She never initiates. She has an iPad with a bathroom icon, but we just hand over hand have her touch it and then we take her. She doesn't use it for other communication except to tell us she wants a snack. She has a one-on-one at school, and thanks for your incredible advice. Thank you so much for writing in.
Yes, thank you. And that's a very tough thing, and God bless you and help you. I hope that you have some help. There's two things to say about this. One is that, and I'm sorry to say this, but we did some research and we published on the fact that as long as when an individual wears a diaper, it is less likely they will actually be toilet trained than if they don't wear a diaper. Wearing the diaper almost makes it very comfortable for the individual to void in the diaper, and then they never really it's almost like their body doesn't get a sign that, oh, I need to initiate, oh, I need to go now. So what I would do is probably take a weekend where you've slept well and you're ready to roll, and do a full-on, I generally follow the Fox and Azrin procedure, and it's a pretty detailed procedure. Everybody knows it who's a behavior analyst. You probably look it up online. I think we've even provided a version of it or a typed up version, which if we haven't,
We've done tons of videos about it where it's been detailed. You can go through our library and put in potty training and you'll find people talking about it.
Right, and I think with this case, what your main thing is just trying to get to the point where, the way that it's done, just to quickly say, is that it doesn't start with initiation, it starts with getting the person on a schedule. So what that means is that you would initiate and take her on a regular schedule where you catch every void, whether it's urine or bowel movement. It doesn't matter. You catch it on a schedule, so you figure out how frequently you have to take her so she voids in the toilet every time. That you can write this down after tracking it for a while, which, when we first started, we take the individual every 15 minutes, or actually they sort of live on the toilet for that first day. But let's assume she's 14, let's assume she's able to urinate, let's say every hour, and that usually most of our kids have a particular time of day where they have a bowel movement, or 2 times a day where they have a bowel movement. Those are the times you want to target for the bowel movement. But what you would be doing is taking her very regularly so she gets into the habit of voiding on the toilet. Then you teach signs and gradually fade yourself away so they initiate. The initiation comes sort of after they've been able to be habit trained for a week, even a month, in some cases for a very long time before they learn to initiate.
And I'm fairly certain, I know we did a whole segment with Sienna Greener-Wooten, Dr. Greener-Wooten, on the Fox Nazarene, so potty training. So definitely check our YouTube page to get a more lengthy explanation of that. Moving on but let us know how it goes, because we can revisit this if we need to. The next question, it's like it came to me from my past. I swear I've had this happen many times. Good morning. My son is 7 with high functioning autism. He is mainstreamed in the 1st grade and doing pretty well. His teacher reports that he takes a long time in the bathroom. Oh, my sister. I've been down this path. He's playing in the sink, playing with the hand dryers. He's pretty slow with a lot of things, but I think he's avoiding work, they say. He has a one-to-one aide for part of the day. What can she do to shorten this time? And thanks. Sending you a hug. Been there.
That's a really good one. It's an easy one, and it's kind of cute. Boys are so easily distractible, my goodness. So, the easiest thing, I guess, is that when he requests to go to the bathroom, the teacher puts a timer on and hands it to him. And that's it. He goes and he has to figure out how to get his stuff done and back before the timer goes off. And I mean, realistically, the timer should give him ample time initially, and then she can reduce it to eventually get to a point where all other kids use.
And the only thing, because we did this exactly, and the only thing that we did was that when the aide told us, she sent home a note saying that he did it within the time, he got a huge reinforcement.
Oh, absolutely.
Huge
you always
reinforcement.
want, and every time. So like if you start with 10 minutes, and he masters that, reinforce that, and then 9 or 8, 5, 4, whatever, make sure he's reinforced for the reductions in time, and then of course the ultimates, and then after a while you get rid of the timer, and don't get rid of it all at once. So you get rid of it and then you give it back, and then make it unpredictable so he doesn't know when the timer is going to be in place.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it works. It does work. And we had to do that a couple of different times. Like every year at the start of the year, he would test the teacher to see how long can I be in the bathroom before you notice I've been gone a long time. And then we'd have to institute it again for a day or 2, and then we were fine. Okay, is it typical for my 2.5-year-old son who's on the autism spectrum to have sleep issues? He never wakes up happy, always upset, and periodically wakes up in the middle of the night and needs to be rocked to sleep.
Oh, I don't know if I would say it's typical, but it's common. I mean, it's there. So, and it's a big issue. And I would really want anyone who's struggling with this to deal with it. Sleep is such a big, big factor in how we do during the day. So, yes, I mean, you have to. Let me just say a couple of things. One is rocking him to sleep, which is, of course, as a parent, that's what we do. What do you do when your child wakes up? You soothe them, calm them, and so on. but it is reinforcement. So it kind of produces a pattern of, that was a really fun experience being rocked to sleep. I might want to do that again tonight. And even, it's not even a conscious decision. It becomes it's a physiological pattern that develops, especially if there's any kind of water or food or milk associated with that. When there's any kind of food or drink associated with waking up, we wake up. Our body will crave that and will wake you up like an alarm clock. It's pretty amazing. So make sure that you're doing less of the rocking and less of the giving of any kind of edible or drink or anything during when he wakes up, because you don't want to reinforce his waking up. And then I would really, I mean, we have sleep procedures for those kids who have very, very hard to fall back asleep, and it's more tough on the parents than it is on the child, but it really does have to do with kind of exiting from letting him teach himself how to fall back asleep. But in the meantime, maybe you want to talk to his physician about some sort of sleep aid. I personally like to use, and we produced one ourselves, but we just haven't gotten around to doing the marketing of it. But there's a melatonin out there called Tranquil Sleep that I really like, and it's not just pure melatonin. It has tryptophan in it, and that makes a huge difference. Huge difference. It literally, regular melatonin is great, and melatonin, by the way, is very good, and tryptophan is too for your body, but melatonin on its own has the tendency to wake you up after a few hours, like 4 hours or 6 hours, and this doesn't. So this actually puts you in a very nice deep sleep, and within 30 minutes, and you sleep through the night. So that's very, very helpful. There's a lot more I could tell you to help you with sleep. I think, do we have any shows that are just about sleep?
We haven't done a show, but we should. We've done lots of segments about sleep, but not a complete show, but we should do that at some point because we get a lot of questions about sleep.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do that. I'm going to put that down on the schedule, as they say. I'm going to move on to this last question, though, because we only have a couple of minutes. Shannon, saw that CARD has the Peers program now, which is a big thrill. And they go on to say, does that program go to high school to work with teens? How is the data taken by the teen or by the therapist? And thank you for bringing sunshine to the autism world. I was fearful of the A word before finding you, and it's given us so much hope. Thank you for watching us and being with us. So the Peers program, maybe if you could give them a little bit of information about what it is and why you brought it to CARD, because...
Well, first of all, I highly respect Dr. Elizabeth Laugesen, who's a researcher at UCLA, and it is her program. It's a social skills program, but it teaches parents while it also teaches teens. And it sort of like gives the teens certain exercises, and then it gives the parents certain exercises, and then it brings them together. And it has been shown to be very effective. I think one round of it is somewhere like 12 weeks or something. We just had, Dr. Laugesen was very kind, and she trained, I think, 1 or 2 people from each of our offices. So there was a lot of people in training over 3 intense days. So we do have a lot of peers experts now at CARD whose job is to start this program up. What I would suggest, which might actually be kind of a cool thing, is you could get Esther Hong, who's the lead here.
Yes.
And she could do a show with you if she hasn't already.
Yes.
And talk a little bit more about peers for all of our families.
We'll do that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. We do have also some of our psychologists here. I don't know if you've ever had Con or Daniel on the show, but they're fabulous to chat with.
We've not had them on the show. We should. They're usually busy, but
we'll do that. They're amazing. You should have both of them on at the same time. They're so much fun.
Okay,
and they are also trained, and the healthcare clinic, their clinic, is also providing peers now to everyone, patients in and out of CARD.
Fabulous. And we've also, I went over to that training for a brief period of time because we had a therapist that somebody asked us to thank. So I went over and got to sit in on part of the training with Dr. Laugesen, and she's been on the show before, and I talked to her, and she's going to come back. So we'll have her talk about the program as well. But we'll get more information to you about that. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Yes.
So I have to let you go.
Thank you
Although
so much.
I don't want to let you go
Thank
ever.
you.
But thank you for being here, and thank you for
Always
answering
fun.
our questions.
My
we
pleasure.
appreciate it so much. We're going to take a break now and go to the A word. And then when we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspaw Jackson is going to be joining me. And our very, very special guest today is Bryce Myler. Boy, if you're looking for an inspirational mom who not only got it done with her kid, but is helping other families to get it done, she is the woman. So all that coming up. But here first is the A word.
There's Miss Jessica. Hello. Say hi. What is it? What's that? Giraffe. He's getting really good at that. How about that guy? Who's this guy?
We have this one program called NVI, which is non-vocal imitation. So he basically has to imitate whatever we do. So we were working on object manipulation, and then Tuesday I tried doing more gross motor things like clapping hands or standing or jumping, and he was able to imitate all of those. Ready? Do this! Yay! Very good! Okay, here you go. Who's hiding now? Me? Do this! Good job! Okay, here you go. Okay, let's do another one. Ready? Do this! Yay! Alright! Here you go, Rockstar. Oh, that's so cool. Alright, you ready? Do this. Good job! Very good. So that was actually a fine motor action with a touch nose. Oh, yeah! How did that happen? You want more? You want more of this? More? Okay. Good asking. We'll do a couple more actions, okay? Do this. Good job. Do this. Good job. Do this. Good try. See here. Can you try? Do this. There you go. All right. Here you go. He's been doing a lot more on his own, even just when I attempt him by just holding the object, not necessarily asking him to imitate more. Cat, that's right. He does do it on his own now, which is really cool. Good asking, buddy. Ouch. Line that up.
That one's up. Oh, there you go. See? How many up do you want to go?
Touch the block. God, what is it? What? Good job.
Sorry, I'm just curious. This is cool.
Okay. I'm interested too. Touch shoes. Where's the shoes? That's a good try. Okay. Let's see. Can you touch crab? Where's the crab? Can you touch it with your finger though? Thank you. Did you see that? What is it? Crab. Say crab. That was so funny. I didn't specify, huh? Touch block. Good job. What is it? What is this? Block. This is his receptive labels, so what I just did basically. And our supervisor had written down things that's in his environment that he might not know or that he might know the labels to, or if he's just seen it or heard the label for it, not necessarily know how to say it per se. And I just went through block, guitar, bear, plane, cat with him, and so he actually knows all of them. So I'm actually going to go through his environment just to see other things like shoes. He actually knew almost everything on here except fork, I think. Yeah. So that's actually really impressive. You amaze me every day, kiddo.
We're taking a walk. We just finished dinner, getting ready to go to bed. But part of our after dinner tradition suddenly has been to take a walk. Make sure. Say, come on, Mama. Come on, Mama. Right, Jack? And then we say, stop. Go. Stop. Go. So we're practicing our stops and goes. Stop. Good stopping. Go. Stop. Good stopping, Jack. Stop. Good stopping. Good job, love. Look at me. Say bye-bye.
Middle. Welcome, welcome. We're so thrilled that you're here with us for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm still eating my croissant.
And that's okay. Well, we do that. We used to have Alex Plank come on and eat breakfast.
Did he?
Yeah, he would come and eat breakfast. And while we were interviewing him, and it was actually kind of lovely.
My friend Tom Bergeron used to be on a show. By the way, Tom just lost his father and his mother within 4 months.
Sorry.
And he's such a supporter of Act Today. He was our first Activist Award winner for Denim and Diamonds. And we love Tom so much. And I just want to give Tom Bergeron and his family, as he put on Facebook, Mom passed away 4 months after my father. They never did like being apart.
Yeah, not a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we, send our love to Tom Bergeron.
Yeah.
We miss him on AFV. We
Isn't
really
he
miss
just
him.
the best? Now, from what I understand, and he's supposed to be coming back to LA from his home in Greenwich, Connecticut, where he lives with Lois and his daughters, although the girls are now grown and working. But he's coming back, and from what I understand, he's interested in pursuing an acting career now, along with hosting Dancing with the Stars.
How lovely.
So
what
cool.
a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
What a fabulous thing. Well, we wish him the very best on that. I wanted to take just a second at the start of the show. We do want to say that in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by our very special guest that we're thrilled to have with us. Bryce Myler is going to be with us for the next installment of Autism Family Portraits, and we love Bryce.
We love her so much.
Bryce is an amazing mom. Her son, as well as Bryce, they're featured in this film, Recovered. It talks about 4 different kids and the therapy that they went through. It sees when you get to see them when they're young and then when they're teenagers. We have the pleasure, you and I, to have been able to meet 3. I don't know if you've ever met Ruffin, but I've never met Ruffin.
I've never met Ruffin, but I've met, of course, all the other kids.
The other kids. And it's an amazing privilege in your life to know these kids and to see where they started and what they've done. It gives you so much hope. So Bryce is going to be with us to talk about their journey.
And Brett, her son.
And her son, Brett.
And
Brett's not with her today, though, is he?
No, he's working.
Just Bryce.
And she's happy that he's working.
Yes.
And,
no small
and
thing.
And Keith, her wonderful husband, another big supporter of Act Today.
Absolutely.
He's participated in golf tournaments for us in the past and raised a lot of money for us. So they're
lovely
really,
man.
and Bryce works here at CARD.
Yes, she is the head of the contracts department here at CARD. Whenever somebody says, I don't know what my insurance is going to be and how am I going to be able to do this, I always say, call the contracts department because you'll get Bryce on your side. And Bryce is the best bulldog in terms of getting somebody that she knows why you want the services.
And bless her heart, I don't know how she does that job
she
because
works
dealing
so
with those
hard.
insurance companies is not, it's a thankless job. But
And she was an insurance expert long before she was an autism mom expert. So, this was her field. But she works more hours than anyone else. If you come here early in the morning, you trip over Bryce. You leave here late at night, you trip over Bryce. And she, on top of all that, she's more fun than any 12 people who work anywhere.
I can tell you, and this is like a Bryce fan club here we're starting, but I can tell you at the CARD retreat, CARD had a retreat. I think you've talked about it on air.
Yes.
Bryce did a puppet show with her staff, the contracts department, about dealing with the insurance companies that literally had me rolling on the ground with laughter.
Too funny. And I will say this too, if April 1st, and this year it falls on a day that we're here working, it's like look out. because Bryce booby traps the entire place.
Okay.
It's
I'm gonna be on the
really
lookout for that.
very
Okay.
fun, but also very scary. Like buttons are changed on your computer keyboard. Oh yeah, there's a panic button in the middle of your computer keyboard. She's a laugh riot. But anyway, I just want to take a second because you had asked me, has anybody written in and said anything about the autism family portraits? And we had a couple of things, but one in particular that I wanted to write. They said, "Hi Shannon, binge watching the show. So much fun and information. Wow. Thank you for having the autism family portraits. The young man who makes jewelry and his mother are so amazing. What a lovely, humorous young man, and loved your group hug." When we did the group hug at the end.
Jeremy Bernstein.
And they said, glad to see Nancy back. Also, they had watched The Future is Bright, the interview with a race car driver who is a sibling, so inspirational. And they said, you guys are the best. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
writing
for
that in.
writing in. We'd love to get feedback.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. So we have some news. We're almost out of
Yes,
time though, but
okay.
we had some news. What do you want to start with
Well,
first?
let's
Good
talk about
news?
this great news. Ricky Fowler, the golfer, fresh
Yeah.
off a tie for 8th at the WGC Cadillac Championship, made a hole-in-one Monday at a charity golf event to earn the L's for Autism Foundation $1 million.
Yeah, Ernie Els, great golfer, has a great charity, and this was amazing good news. $1 million that hole-in-one got them. Thank you to Ricky Fowler, and thanks to the golf tournament. And we're hoping at some point to get Ernie Els himself on here to talk about what kinds of things that amount of money can do.
Okay.
So thrilled about that.
And then the UK, the story out of the UK, which
Yeah.
has started out kind of to be kind of a sad, like rather disturbing story, but then has kind of taken on a positive spin. A UK restaurant owner, a guy named Mike Jennings, who owns Grenache restaurant, which sounds fancy, right?
Doesn't it?
Outside Manchester, hired a young man with autism, Andy Foster. And he said that a table of customers were rude to him. The customers seemed to have a problem with him, even though his service was good. He explained to them that Andy suffered from autism. Their response was that they did not want to be served by him. And
the question was even asked, why would you hire someone like that
Yes.
for this kind of a restaurant? Like, that's so unfortunate of you to have done that.
which is just mind-boggling to me, because I think obviously we should be applauding Mike Jennings, but he said, he responded to that with, "Here at Grenache, we employ staff based on experience, knowledge, and passion, not the color of their skin or the way they look, how many tattoos they have, their dress size, religious beliefs, or illness, or anything. We do not discriminate." And so now that post has gone viral, and everybody is posting, "Well done. Too many customers think they have the right to treat hospitality staff and owners any way they want." We think that he should be commended that he hired Andy Foster. And we think that his business will now go up, hopefully.
And absolutely, they've had so many people writing in support of the restaurant. We've reached out to them, hoping to get them on the show via Skype, but they're inundated right now. I'm sure we're one of a million different people who've written in and asked them things, but good job.
Good job. Way to
all the
go.
way around. Good job. And then our last story, really disheartening, for all of us. Family, where the dad is asking for some help and support because his son Matthew Garnett, who is 15 years old and on the autism spectrum, had some problems and was in a situation where he was hitting his dad. Help was called in, and they placed Matthew into a situation that his dad said, our assumption was
prison.
that it was a temporary holding measure, probably a matter of a couple of days, couple of weeks, but they've actually put him into I don't think the boy feels that it's a prison. As far as he's
Yes.
concerned, it's a prison, but it's a mental health facility where he's in lockdown. And it's been 6 months.
Oh, just
6 months.
It's unconscionable. That's my new favorite
And the
word.
family is trying to get him out. The boy thinks that he's in prison. They're asking for some help and
terrible.
support. This is at St. Andrew's Healthcare in Northampton. We're talking about this is happening across the pond in England. But the problem seems to be that this healthcare facility is not used to dealing with parents.
No.
and that this is a circumstance that they're not used to dealing with. The healthcare facility is saying that they're working on it. They're going to get him reevaluated in the next couple of months, that they can possibly see about getting him moved.
What really concerns me here is what the post-traumatic stress disorder that this young man, this 15-year-old boy.
They've created a mental health issue.
They've created a mental health issue, and I don't know how people, do you know whether this father, the petition, where people can access that? They've received almost 200,000 signatures, considerable media coverage, and Garnett, the father, Garnett is that's the father, Robin Garnett. And I don't know how people support getting Matthew out of this facility.
Yeah, I was looking for it yesterday. I have not yet found it, but there is an online petition if any of our viewers know exactly where to find it. And again, you said the name of the dad, Robin Garnett, with 2 T's, and the boy's name is Matthew. And this has been running on the BBC, so especially our viewers who are watching overseas, if you know where we can go to sign on the petition to help. 200,000 signatures is a lot, but let's make it a lot more.
Yeah, and let's
get some help to this family.
Get this family help and get them in the proper place.
Okay, but in the meantime, we have a fabulous guest who's going to be joining us, and we're going to go to break and show you a clip from Recovered, the DVD Recovered, which features Bryce talking about the end of therapy with her son, Brett. It's a very emotional video for me. It always makes me a mess. Even talking about it, I well up. So I'm going to talk to Nancy and Bryce while we show that. And when we come back, Bryce will be here with us. But check this out. This is an amazing mom who has done and continues to do an amazing job, not only for her kid, but for all of our kiddos on the spectrum. Bryce Myler.
Look at me. What's your name?
My name is Brett.
Ask me.
Lisa, what's your name?
My name is Lisa. How old are you?
4 years old.
Ask me. Look, ask me.
Wait.
No. How old are you?
I'm 4 years old.
Look.
Lisa, how old are you?
Good job. I'm 25.
First year and a half, they were doing drills every day. Things were going pretty well. He was able to talk. He was starting to talk, learning more words, learning what they meant. But he was having more eye contact, but not real good eye contact. And one of the things CAR did for us, they always hooked us up with alternative providers. Good speech therapists, referrals to whoever they thought we needed in addition. Medical doctors that were doing cutting edge things. Doreen was on top of that. And one of the things she said was, you need to get him to a vision specialist. Okay, and that do vision therapy. And I don't know what that is, but we've done it all, so I made an appointment. And the doctor, and he says, well, he has absolutely no ability to use his central vision. And he explained what that meant to me. And so what that meant is the only way his brain could really understand and see things is using his peripheral vision. So it took me about 10 minutes to figure out what he said and what he meant. What he meant is that Brett was looking at everybody the whole time. Like that. Because that's the only way he could do it.
I don't like battery.
Brett, look at me. Why do you like Grandma?
This is nice to you.
To me.
Yes, because he is nice to me.
Good.
The very devastating thing about autism is that you not only have to take in and deal with such a pervasive and significant diagnosis. I mean, any kind of diagnosis, when someone tells you your child is sick with a cold, it's upsetting. But when you hear something like your child has autism, that's very difficult to take. And what makes it even more difficult, I think, is that there's not a very good understanding of what autism is about, so your physician is unlikely to tell you what that means, first of all. And secondly, people don't realize enough that recovery is possible from autism, that there are ways that you can help your child become much better and actually recover from the diagnosis. The general medical community believes that this is a lifelong disorder, unfortunately.
I always, I wondered what would happen if I had listened to the person that diagnosed him. As the years went on, it made me so angry. It's one of the things that angered me the most about the whole situation was that this person almost cheated Brett out of his whole life.
There were a lot of times when I was with him that he just seemed to figure things out. We always had different various targets that we worked on. Richard and I would just constantly go about to different skills in a variety of different ways to really focus on generalization, so he wasn't memorizing anything and nothing was rote. A lot of it was at that point, even though we had a table and chair, we really weren't doing much at the table and chair unless it was like homework.
I'll talk about the last day, if I could do it without crying. A lot of this stuff it was really emotional for me at the end, because we had worked so hard. We had done so many different things. We did vision therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, all those years. And of course, CARD was the main instigator of all the progress, Of course it was. The last few weeks were very hard. It was very hard. You'd think I would be happy, and I was happy, but it was like you just couldn't believe that it was over, and it was so emotional. I had a hard time keeping it together the last couple of weeks, but we had, all the different the pieces of equipment. You have, the table that they can sit at, and they do their drills every day, and they do their work. So towards the end, the last 6 months or so, it was just Richard and Kathy coming, and we're getting close to the end, and I took the table and I turned it over, and I had his grandmother was there for a lot of the time when I was at work and they did the sessions. We had her sign it, we had Richard sign it, we had Kathy sign it, I signed it, and Brett signed it. And the last day, Richard signed it. Richard was the last one to come. He signed off, and shook Brett's hand and said, "You're done," and Brett was very happy. We brought the table home, and his father and him put it up in the rafters in the attic, and Brett says, "I'll never sit at that table again." And I said, "No, you won't. You don't ever have to sit there again." And it was like closure for him,
We tried not to watch so that we wouldn't cry along with it, but we watched a little bit, and so emotional. And Bryce Myler is here with us.
Hi.
The
Hi,
woman who was
Bryce.
in that video, the woman who lived that, the woman who made such a difference along with your husband. We don't want to leave your husband out because he's a pretty amazing guy.
Right.
But thank you for being here with us.
Well, I heard your introduction to me. I thought my head was going to blow up. I think it did blow up. I've never had that kind of attention before.
Really? Are you kidding me?
You guys are amazing.
We say nice things about you behind your back all the time.
And everybody does here.
Oh my gosh! I just wow, this is amazing, and you guys are rock stars to me. The show is so great. Everything you do with Act Today.
Thank you.
Well,
it just blows my mind at all the things you guys are involved in. So thank you.
Well, but I gotta say, your snowshoes are the ones that I was following for so long, and I still come to you for help and advice whenever something's going on that I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like over to Bryce's office to ask her. So I think you're the grand poobah of all this, that you make it possible for so many people to access the help through the contracts department. So thank you for everything that you do.
And you're a trailblazer when it comes to being an autism mom, because Brett, your son, let's shift to talking about Brett, and tell us about Brett, first of all, today.
Now, okay, he's 24, and in May he graduated from CSUN. He has his degree in political science, which is
awesome.
It's not that specific, so it's not easy to get a job with that degree, and we knew that. But But no, he got his degree and he wants to go, work at a company where he can grow and, basically become part of the middle class. He is my child, and when I was coming out, I didn't have any passions for anything. I was a runner, and so was Brett, and I ran marathons, and I could run, 3 hours a day and be perfectly happy. But you can't have a job at that, really, unless you're elite, which I wasn't.
Right.
Way far from it, but I love to run. So, I got a job in insurance, and I worked as hard as I could and tried to advance as much as I could, and, had a career out of it, made a living out of it. And Brett's the same as me. He doesn't have a passion for anything specific, except for he does love to run. So he's just trying to find a job and get out there and live on his own, be part of the middle class. He just recently, like 3 months ago, he got a job at a corporation where he's doing admin and all that kind of thing. So it's the same thing that I did. He, as well as I can imagine any child that has autism that's been through ABA for more than, a little while, he has the most amazing work ethic of any person that I know, because he was forced to work so hard every day all those years. And even when he was done with ABA, all of his, 7 or 8 through high school, everything was really difficult for him. Academically, he had to work 3 times as hard as everybody else. Socially, even though he was technically recovered, he still had a lot of issues where everything was 5 times harder for him, and especially academics. All I did when I got home from work was write tests for him. Because he really had a hard time retaining things. We went to other people after ABA.
Right.
And, I can, hundreds and hundreds of nights being up till 10 o'clock, writing him another test until he passed it. So I knew he'd pass it the next day.
Bless you, because I go through this with Wyatt.
Oh,
but
I can
do have a
imagine.
tutor, a brilliant tutor, Andrea Watkins, who we're going to have on the show at some point, who is working with Wyatt on the reading comprehension and other things.
That was very difficult.
Very difficult for our
extremely
kids,
difficult.
Let's go back to the beginning, and I want to touch on the running a little bit more later too, because I find that very interesting.
You're an
I'm
excellent
a runner,
runner.
yeah, and I haven't been running for about the last 1.5 years or 2 though.
Yeah, I had to quit a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Everything,
The knees, everything goes, doesn't it?
I got heel, knees, hips, the whole thing.
It all goes.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about when Brett was diagnosed and his development as a young child. How did that diagnosis happen, and what led to that?
Well, he was diagnosed at 2 years and 10 months.
Okay.
But at an early age, he was happy. He wasn't afraid of contact or anything like that. He was a happy baby, but he wasn't doing things. He wasn't progressing. He wasn't pointing. He wasn't doing all the milestones, even though he was happy. We thought he might be deaf because he wasn't answering to his name. So there was all these signs. So I kept pushing the pediatrician to, said, what's wrong? I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't even know what autism was back then.
Right. What year was this about?
93.
Okay.
Yeah, he was born in 91.
Very little known by pediatricians.
Right.
So you kept pushing the pediatrician, and did you meet with resistance?
Well, yes, because they said, oh, he's just a boy or whatever. But one time in the pediatrician's office, he had a really bad fit, which the doctor hadn't seen before, and something happened with him. He says, let's get his hearing tested. So we put him under chloral hydrate 3 times to try to get him to go under so that they could do the hearing conduction test.
Right.
And it didn't work. A lot of drugs on him, as well as other autistic kids, they have the different effect.
Yes.
I know that's true for a lot of them. It's definitely true for Brett. A lot of the stuff you'd give him, it would do the opposite.
Right.
So that didn't work. So we had to take him to UCLA and have him put under general to do the hearing test. And probably gonna cry.
It's okay. I'm gonna cry.
We have tissues.
And
We cry every day.
Memories are very tough.
I know. At this point, we had already been referred because of the issues to the Child Development Center in Simi Valley. It wasn't regional center, but it was kind of like that.
Right.
So we had already been referred there, and we were seeing an occupational therapist, and we were in the children's group twice a week. Where they try to get them to play and all that. And she gave me a book, and she said, you should look at this because I think he's autistic. And I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
I didn't know what it was at all.
Yeah.
So I read the book, and I fell down on the floor, and I thought it was,
Yeah,
you know,
it described your son.
It described him. And in that book, at that time, it said, it said it's, you know, completely,
Uncurable.
totally disabling, uncurable, and only, 20% of them will even be able to talk. And none of them will be able to live on their own ever.
Right.
You know.
So you thought the most dire prognosis. And so from there, that was when he was 2 years and 10 months. And once you actually got the diagnosis from this center?
We got it from UCLA.
Okay, from UCLA.
We got it from UCLA. They were suspecting, developmental delays.
Right.
That's how we got into the program. And then they gave me the book, and then we decided we would go do the test at UCLA. And we're, me and my husband were sitting there, and he understood kind of what was going on, but I had been reading the books. So the doctor came out and he said his hearing is perfect, and I just lost it because I knew.
Right.
I knew.
And where did you go from there after picking yourself up off the floor?
Yeah, we went to UCLA, and we saw at that time, the preeminent diagnostician in the world, B.J. Freeman. And B.J. Freeman, and I don't know why we did this, but my husband and I were sitting there, and she said, we came for an appointment. It was her and another one of her colleagues. She comes in, and she watches Brett walk back and forth, and it was about a minute and a half. She said, well, he's definitely autistic. I can tell you right now. And we're like, wow, how does she know that without, we were like impressed by her. It was really strange.
Yeah.
We were impressed, and like, why was I impressed? It was a terrible thing. I suspected it, but she said, and so about 3 hours later, and one of the things she said was, he's probably never going to be able to talk. You're probably going to want to, or need to, put him in a home by the time he's 10 because he's going to be big. She already could tell that he was a big kid. He's going to be big, and you won't be able to control him. So, just be prepared for that. And all you need to do is just keep yourselves together because there's nothing you can do. And so we walked out of there about 3 hours later. I went, oh my God, this is,
right.
This is ridiculous. And then, and it was devastating, of course. And then a month later, we go to a parents group meeting where Dr. Graham-Pichet is speaking.
There you go.
About ABA therapy, which I really didn't know anything about. To back up, I was in a child psychology class at Northridge within the year before, and they had shown the Lovas film.
Okay.
They showed it. And
Dr. Ivar Lovas, who Doreen studied under,
Right.
for those of you that don't know, who was really in the forefront of using ABA for children with autism.
Yeah.
So
they showed the three adults playing pool, and you can't tell which one.
Love that film.
I know which one is autistic. So, I brought that up to B.J. Freeman. I said, when she said, there's nothing you can do, I said, well, what about that? I saw this film, where they're doing this kind of therapy. She said, oh, no. It's dog training. It's violent. It's aversive. You can't do it. Nobody's doing it. And I'm like, okay. So, then a month later, we get involved with the parents groups, which everybody should do.
Yes.
That was one of the best things I ever did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the parents really have a good insight on what is working, what kinds of therapies are really working.
They've lived it.
They've lived it,
And they've
yes.
also lived the successes with their own kids, and it's so
Right.
important. I agree with you. So you went to the parent group. You heard Doreen came to speak. How did you get Brett into an ABA program at CARD then? When did that start? How old was he? And tell us what that was like.
Within the next month, we had Regional Center funding it at first. We were able to get Regional Center to fund it, and they funded us with her. And we talk about it all the time, but as she was leaving the parents group meeting, I stood there, and there was a bunch of supporters and people that didn't know anything. So I stood there and I kind of argued with her, and I said, "B.J. Freeman says this is not good.
Right.
It's not going to work. And she says, she said, Bryce, I guarantee that I will get him to be able to talk, and you will he'll be talking so much that you'll want him to
Stop.
to be quiet.
To be quiet.
And I stood there and I argued with her, and she
Yeah.
was very respectful because
She knew
that's
what you were
Doreen.
going through.
Right.
And she said, well, I really do think I know that we can help him, and
Right.
we've helped so many others. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, I'll go with you. But I argued with her.
Yeah,
at the door.
It's so many similarities. In your story, Wyatt was older because we went through more of a confusing time with diagnosis, but because he did regress late. But Dr. Andrew Levinson, the minute I took Wyatt in, I mean, within a minute, he watched what I said. What do you think? He goes, I think he's autistic, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
know that? He goes, I see hundreds of children with autism
Yeah.
every month. I know it.
I know what to look for.
And so anyway, so how old then was Brett? You got into CARD. How old was Brett when he started his ABA program?
He was he was diagnosed at, it was 210. He was 3. No, he was 3.
3 years into
He was
okay.
3.
Now,
so you got him
Kelby,
in.
do you have queued up? Are we able to show him at the 20th gala? Did we decide to do that? Okay, never mind. We don't. It's what, that's okay because
Yeah.
I have to be honest. I would sob and be a puddle.
Right. He
But
was
I want to
amazing.
encourage.
I would cry too.
I want to encourage our viewers, if you now think of knowing what you know now and you want to know, so, and this was years ago, so he was younger than he is now, but what was he?
About 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago, so he was 19, speaking in a hall full of people.
Literally
at the
thousands
of people, and I mean,
I got up there and was nervous speaking.
everyone was intimidated that was there and speaking. He gave up and gave a speech that there was not a dry eye in the house.
Bawling.
Standing ovation.
And the
flat out
speech was
crying.
amazing. He was so articulate. It was funny and emotional. I mean, the speech that we all want our 19-year-olds to give at any point in their life, but to know that this is what they had said about this young man. Honestly, it kills me every time. But you can watch that, and we'll make sure that you guys can watch it another time. We can't be a puddle right now.
No.
But we should take a break.
And then when we come back, I want to hear about the ABA process, Brett going through it, because we've been seeing some have recovered, what it was like for you as a family, how tough it was to deal with that, and then how he made progress, and then we'll take it from there.
And we'll also show some pictures that you have graced us with so that you guys can see this beautiful young man that we're talking about. But first, a quick break, and then we'll be back with more with Bryce Myler, Autism Family Portraits after this.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing, and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. first, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith. Okay, we are back with Let's Talk Autism, and we have our Autism Family Portraits segment today with, we know her as the amazing Bryce Myler, who has a son, Brett, who is recovered, and we know that's a controversial word, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but Bryce took us up to the point where Brett had been diagnosed at 2 years and 10 months. She had met Dr. Grampichet. She got him into CARD at around exactly three. Then you get your ABA program. What was that like as a family?
Well, I can remember starting the therapy and going to clinics and thinking, I wonder how long I'm going to have to do this. You know, is it 6 months? Is it whatever? I mean, I didn't really know what I was in for. And it was very, very difficult. For my son, he was very stubborn, which, you know, most of them are. He absolutely did not want to have anything to do with it. I always describe him like a baby tiger that you're trying to make sit in a chair. He's going to fight you every second of the way because he doesn't really understand what you want him to do. And then I liken them sitting in that chair teaching somebody that barely knows multiplication, trigonometry, or calculus. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because in his mind, it was that confusing to him. Yeah. All they wanted him to do was point to the block. But in his mind, he didn't understand any of it. He had no concept of language or labeling.
So he was that I think this is
he had no language.
I think this is so important for parents to hear, that Brett was that really disabled by his autism that he had no language. Even pointing to an item was so excruciatingly hard for him. Well, and you kept at this, and the therapist kept at this. And when did you start to see improvement?
Immediately. I mean, you know, with him, he didn't understand any of those concepts. His brain didn't understand that things were things. He just didn't have any of that. Yeah. So immediately, as soon as I began to work with him, it was very, very painful. He screamed and cried when they came to the door. He would run away. He would cry. He would sit there, and sometimes he would cry himself to sleep for an hour because he really, really didn't want to do it. You know, he didn't know what they wanted.
It's so hard in the face of that, Bryce, to continue.
Oh, it's terrible.
When you know, you feel in front of you your child is suffering, yet intellectually you know, this is helping my child. But emotionally, we've all been here as autism moms with therapy. We're just like, please, I just don't want I feel like my child's being tortured, but you know it's good for them. That's hard, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if I had done it for 6 months and seen no improvement or no abilities emerging, I wouldn't keep doing it. But you could see how they broke everything down into the simplest step to make it easy as possible for him to understand what they wanted to do. And they did that, even though he was averse to everything. Right. You know, his compliance section of his ABA therapy was huge. He was the most incompliant or non-compliant child in the world. But within a couple of weeks of them showing him something, he would be able to do it, and I could see it. Yeah. So I had to make him keep going because that was the only thing that was helping him.
And was part of it too, Bryce, that you looked at what they were doing and you saw that it wasn't actual torture. It felt like it was torture to him because he didn't know how to do it.
He didn't want to do it.
I think that's a part of it too, is that it's not as if you're seeing somebody beat your child. You're seeing somebody say point to the block, and he's frustrated with it.
Yeah, in his mind, in his body, he doesn't even want to sit in the chair.
Right. Yeah. You know, one mom said to me once, you know, well, autism is a disorder of laziness, and I said, well, wait, and I said to her, but listen to what she said. She said, and she has 2 kids on the spectrum, and she said, our kids don't want to do. She goes, maybe laziness isn't the right word, but they will fight like anything to go back to autism world and not be pulled out of it.
Well, how would you feel if you, as a quote unquote normal person, were pulled into autism world?
I would hate it.
How would you feel if
Yeah.
somebody was pulling
So
you
I
into a
think,
world that wasn't in your brain?
Yeah, I think it's a world of opposition, and in some ways, you do take the child kicking and screaming in
Yes.
the beginning in most cases. So how many years then until Brett was considered recovered?
5 years and 25 days.
And 3 hours
And how many minutes?
and 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Right.
we knew exactly with him, he was doing really well, but he had no language. They had to come really far with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, after about 4 years, they're deciding, Dr. Grampichet is deciding that, we're doing really well. He was keeping up academically. He was keeping up in all these other ways. And the last concept to master was theory of mind. It's the idea that people think things different than you do.
Yeah.
And they were worried about it. They said, we're not sure about this, but they worked and 30 hours a week for all the 5 years. And then he got it, and they said, well, we're going to be done soon. And then we had to decide what we were going to do.
And that's a panic moment, right?
Well, the funny thing is when we first started, I said, how long am I going to have to
Right.
come to these meetings every 2 weeks? This is really...
Like, let's get it over. Let's
yeah,
get it over.
like 6 months, whatever. But after the 5 years, it was kind of like, and it's weird, but it's kind of like, I just stop this now?
Yeah.
I
It
just
becomes
stopped
so
doing this.
ingrained in your life. I mean, for me,
It
I
is.
can't imagine life without card for Wyatt. I
Right,
can't
right,
imagine
right.
it.
And the day that they said to me, Jem is done in 6 months,
Mhm.
I had a panic attack.
I did
and
too.
I came down to your office in tears and said, I don't know anybody else in the world to talk to about this
Yeah.
but you, and you helped me through that day. But let's talk a little bit about the word recovered.
Mhm.
Is that a word that you use?
Yes.
And it's a word that is
And I'm glad somebody coined it. I guess I don't know if Card did. I think Card did. You really can't say cured because his brain is still structured differently.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't say cured, but when you say recovered, it means the book that I read at the Child Development Center that said all these things. Right. You can't say any of those things about him anymore, that he can't speak, he can't do any of these things. He functions the same as everybody else, right? So you can't call him autistic anymore. You need to find somebody, and I did, of course, 2 different clinicians saying, I cannot diagnose him as autistic. Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't have quirks, it doesn't mean he doesn't have social issues, but if a clinical psychologist, 2 of them, say, I could not diagnose him, then what is he?
Right.
He's not cured because we know his brain somebody had to spend 5 years, 30 hours a week, rewiring his brain because it wasn't normal.
Right.
Now that wiring, it's not normal, it's a different
Difficult.
pathways or whatever.
Yeah.
But if he does all the things that a normal person can do, then he has to be something. He's not autistic.
Yeah.
He's not cured. He's got to be something, and let's call it recovered, let's call it anything we want. I read this book. I think you read it too. The Curious Incident of the Dog at Midnight.
Yes.
At night.
In
Yeah.
the night, yes.
Where and this always gets me. The teenager in the story is autistic, and he's talking about the kids at the school that are making fun of him, and they were saying terrible words, retarded, whatever, and pointing to him and stuff. And so the kids got in trouble. So the kids on the bus, as soon as they see him, they say special needs, to where you can call it whatever you want, but he is not autistic, and that's all I care about.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And not being autistic, it just means that he worked so hard to take all the components that equal autism and work so hard to get rid of those to where he doesn't have to have those hold back, those restrictions anymore.
And there's a movement right now because the diagnosis is an autism spectrum disorder. And there's a movement right now to sort of separate what's the disorder from autism, that maybe there's autism and then there's maybe autism spectrum disorder, because after the disabling aspects of the disorder
Mm-hmm.
are taken away, what are you left with?
Okay.
And that's, an interesting way to look at things,
Yeah,
because
right.
our kids are different, and they're always going to be different, and their brains work in a
Mhm.
different way, which when you take away the disorder part of it, there are a lot of pluses.
A lot
to
of pluses to repetitive behaviors, a lot of pluses to hyperfocus, a
Well,
lot of pluses
to be able to look at things and see them in a different way.
Right,
I mean,
right,
Temple
right.
Grandin talks about that all the time.
Mhm.
She says if a person who was on the autism spectrum had designed Fukushima, there would never have been a problem, because they would have been able to see. And she says that when the cavemen were sitting around, figuring out how to skin the tiger to get to the bones, that it was the people in the tribe who were more toward the autism ends who went, all right, we're going to build a fire, and we're going to draw some paintings on the cave to show other people how to do things.
Exactly.
That we need this kind of thinking, but when it disables the person
Right.
is the problem.
Right.
To the point where they can't do anything.
Right. Brett still has, he has his issues like anybody else. He has he has a few social issues, but I mean, he's social and he's friendly and all that kind of stuff. But he has the same amount of issues that anybody else does, really, in his own way. Yeah. So the thing that I am proud of him for is that he is not limited by any of the still different wiring in his brain that he will always have. He's not limited as far as being independent. My biggest thing for myself, it's always been this way, is independence. I don't believe there's any gender issues in this country. I may be wrong, but I feel women have pretty much the same opportunity as anybody else in this country, right? But when I was, 18 years old, my biggest thing was I will always be independent. I will never be dependent on a man. I will always be able to take care of myself. And the biggest, the biggest devastation for me with the diagnosis was he won't be able to be independent. And that's everything, is that you can always take care of yourself.
Right.
So, and now he can.
Now he can.
He is independent. He may have other issues, but he will always be able to take care of himself. He's proven that. And another thing, when you first get the diagnosis, my biggest thing was after a few months was I'm never going to be able to die. And I've heard that from other people.
Oh yeah.
Is I don't want to watch him suffer for the rest of my life.
I can't
because he was suffering.
I can't bear to leave my child.
No.
If he
I never
has
get to
this
die
disorder.
no matter what,
Right.
and I'm tired now.
Yes.
So I know that Brett will be fine.
Without you.
Yes, I know that.
But you're still not allowed to
and
die.
I don't.
Yeah,
how,
I will.
how much time do we have? Because I'm not on IB with.
We've got about 9 minutes.
Okay, great. I want to ask about. Okay, you just talked about the fears. I'll never be able to die, and I'm sure Keith, your husband, must have felt much
Yes,
the same way.
he did.
Can you talk a little bit about the emotional toll it took on you and your husband?
Well,
and your marriage together.
Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of couples. It's a huge statistic. The separation rate is huge because there's so much stress in dealing with that. But
there's a new statistic. There's a new study that showed that the families that do stay together tend to be families that stay together much longer than
Right.
people who never had a child.
Well,
with
I
special
totally agree
needs.
with that. I didn't know the statistics, but my husband and I, it was so hard and so painful and so difficult. He basically worked all the time because we had to pay for the ABA therapy. We were the first ones to sue our school district after paying for it for 2 years, or 2.5 years, and the first ones to win all those years ago. But before that, he just worked all the time to pay for the therapy because he was getting 30
And I'm sure it
hours
was
a
an
week.
escape for him. At the same time, probably work. Do you think? Maybe pouring himself into that to feel like he was doing something positive?
Well, exactly, because I was doing all the clinical
Right,
stuff and,
right.
and managing all the therapists and all that. But so he was doing that. So the only time we really saw each other. Oh, and he had to take Brett to school or wherever in the morning because Brett couldn't separate from me. So I went to work at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's what I still kind of do. I get to work really early, so nobody is there. So I went to work at 3 o'clock in the morning so I could come home at 11 or 12 and sit outside the door and listen to therapy all those years. And he would, drop Brett off because he could separate easier from him. So we only saw each other really on Friday and Saturday nights. You know what I mean?
Really hard.
And we would connect, and I think, we were much closer because he was doing what he had to do. He knew he had to make the money, and I was working full time at Anthem. the insurance company, and then I would just be doing therapy and homework with him, and that was it until Friday or Saturday night, and that's all we had. That's all there was. But I think he could see that Brett was getting better.
And that gave him hope.
Right. And so he could see that Brett was getting better, and I was behind it, and I was doing that. So he, at that point, when he saw it was working, he trusted me and let me spend whatever money we had on any therapies that I thought were okay, because he knew I was the expert. And it was working, and then the two of us together watching what we did, or watching what Brett did on our instruction or our management, the two of us just kind of got lifted up like, oh my God, this is not supposed to happen. They told us he was going to be in a home, and he's getting better, and he can talk. And it was always these, there was a lot of bad days, because, they'll be good one day, and then they'll, just 3 steps back, and you're devastated.
Yeah.
That happened all the time, but the aggregate was getting better. And as the years went by, the two of us were just so proud of what we were doing and that it worked. So I think a lot of people would start fighting about the money. That, that one person wants to do this therapy and it's going to drain all their funds, which you shouldn't do. If that had happened, and I've told Keith this before, if that had happened, I would have won. If he had said, no, I don't want to spend the money on this, I think he knew.
Right. I think a lot of us, I don't know if you had, I had a point in my marriage to Reed where I said, I'm parenting this child with or without you.
Exactly.
And you make the decision if you want to stay with me and do it with me. I want you to, but I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And that was after we were at an air show, and he got angry that Wyatt wasn't engaging in seeing the airplane that Daddy flew in Vietnam, and he literally walked off, and we didn't find him for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I was so furious when we finally found him that I said, look, this is it.
Yeah.
And Holly Robinson Pete had that with Rodney, and many couples do. But I think once, like you said, and you said the statistics showed, once you get past that hard part, then you get more committed.
Yeah.
Tell us about, if you were to say to parents listening today, because this story is very inspirational, what advice would you give parents at home about this journey that you've walked, and how would you encourage them in their journeys? I know it's a tough question.
And then we have a question from a viewer too before we go.
Just don't give up. Just don't ever give up. We had it's the corniest thing ever, but there's a movie called Vision Quest. It's with Tim Allen.
Yeah.
It's a goofy movie, and it was when me and the kids. I had a lot of kids on my block that helped with socialization, and I did that myself because Brett had to have the one-on-one. So we had this gang of kids, and I wanted that as before Brett wanted to run. Oh my God, he had a fit. We ran a 5K, and we were called the Burnside Bombers. That's the street we live on and stuff. And the Vision Quest movie, and we had on our shirts, never give up, never surrender.
Never give up.
And as long as you can see that something's happening every single day, just do as much as you can to try to make some kind of difference. And in the end, say with Brett, in the beginning it's just, therapists and everything. And in the end, when you're close to thinking that he may not need ABA anymore, or recovery, or whatever you want to call it, all you need to do is look at it. You have to know what's normal. I had these other kids. I don't have any other children. He's my only child, which, I feel sorry for families with more than one child, because I don't know how they separate their attention. I really feel for them, because that was my only thing. If I had 2 other kids, I don't know what I would have done. It might not have come out as it did, but you look at what is normal, and you have to know what crosses a line of different about him.
Right.
You constantly know what those things are, and just pick the biggest one and work on it. Work on it every day until that's gone. Then pick the next one. And then, believe it or not, at some point, it might be all gone.
Yeah.
And it was.
What's the question, Jen?
I want to say, Kelby, we're going to go a little bit over, and that's okay. Somebody said, Bryce is amazing, and thank you so much for sharing. And then they said, hi, Shannon, can you please ask Bryce if her son needed accommodations at college? Did he stay on his own, get tutoring, etc.? Did his professors know or need to know? and they said, please have more Bryson. Thanks so much.
Oh, well, that's so sweet. No, he was done with card at 7 years and 10 months or whatever. After that with school, it was really difficult for him. He was like a super ADHD kid that didn't want to pay attention, didn't want to, try on the test because he wanted to be done.
Right.
So we hired a clinical psychologist, and then we had her for many, many years. But then by the time he was in high school, he really didn't. We had tutoring for math, tutoring for science, the more difficult subjects. But he really didn't need. He still had an IEP because he was in the school system. But by the time he was in high school, he really didn't need any attention at all. And the only thing the school was supposed to do was tell me if he did something out of the ordinary.
Okay.
Or something that needed my attention to fix.
Right.
Or he's doing something that, and this did happen. There were things that he would start doing that crosses a line. That's not normal. So if I didn't know about it, I couldn't fix it.
Right.
And because I knew how to talk to his brain about how, okay, here's what you're doing. You can't do that. Here's why, and here's what you do instead. The redirection or whatever.
Right.
So by the time he was in college, there was no need for anything. He could drive, and we paid for college ourselves. He went to community college, and then Northridge, so state college. It's not that expensive. It still is, but there was no need for anything. And one of my biggest things with this is, and it really helped me a lot, when you say the kid is recovered, anytime you try to say that it's okay that he's doing something that's not normal, you have to question the acceptance of you calling him recovered. So that really stopped me a lot of times. There's a lot of stuff that he did along the way that, oh my God, this isn't right. This, in my mind, I made him fix that. I fixed it with him, because if you're recovered, you're not allowed to do that. It's not you take away the excuse to let yourself do things. And so even though he was still doing things that were autistic, technically, it forced me to say, well, you can't do that, because then we have to take away the recovered label.
In a weird way, it motivated you.
It motivated me because, I would be tempted to say, well, I know he was autistic,
We'll
and
let this
that's
slide.
normal, let it go. If I let it slide, then I can't say recovered anymore.
Okay.
So that really motivated
That's
me.
Interesting, yeah, really interesting. And a
It
good way to-
motivated me to get everything fixed, because I didn't want to let go of that.
Right. And we should say, he's a very happy young man.
He really, really is.
And is grateful for the time, and eventually we'll play the speech for you, because he talks about that, about how it really didn't mean that much to him before, but how much it means to him now to have his life and to have all the things that he can do because of those therapies.
Right, and because of it's ABA. He did he did speech, he did OT, he did fast, he did everything.
Everything.
For speech was 8 years, OT was 9 years.
Okay.
He needed all those different things to get his body to move right, to get his speech patterns right, everything.
Lots of work.
But,
and you and Keith are to be commended. I know our guests enjoyed you today. I know we've gone a little over. And people said, can you have Bryce back? I'd like to say to any parents out there listening today, if you have questions for Bryce, why don't you write us, write Shannon, and maybe we could convince you to come back for 20 minutes, not the whole hour next time. But I think I think the conversation today has probably sparked a lot of questions from parents out there that have, kids that are still making progress, but they have some questions, and they would probably love to hear from you.
So
So will
in
you come back?
fact, last year you did a fundraiser for the ATMF run, and I paid a ridiculously small amount of money to buy Bryce's time for one day. And I keep saying that
Maybe we
someday
could do
I'm
that
gonna cash
again.
that in, and I'm just going to say, I own you
Can
for
I
a
come with
day
you?
and make you sit here and
And
answer
and
people's
hear both
questions.
you have
of you?
to do your dishes and wash your car and do all
No,
that kind of stuff.
no, that would be a horrible waste of your time
Yeah.
to wash my dishes. What I said then was I want to set up a phone here and have people be able to call in and ask you insurance questions.
Sure, that would be fine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I do that all day anyway.
Right, but to do it here so people could hear, what's happening
Yeah.
and say to people, all right, Bryce is answering this question right now, and you can call in and ask her a question and have it be private so that if they want to talk about something that they
That'd be
can't share
great.
on the air, we can do
Sure.
it.
Hey, listen, we
That'd be
know you
great.
deal with those insurance companies, so we know you're a dog on a pork chop,
Oh my
baby.
God.
And you were that way in recovering your child.
I
So
refer people
please,
to you all the time.
please write into us if you have
Yes.
questions for Bryce. We're going to try and get her back in a short
Yeah.
amount of time
I
here.
own her for a day.
Okay, okay.
All right. Thank you so much for being
Thank you.
here.
Thank you,
You're so
everybody.
inspirational.
We're back tomorrow, and we have a wonderful guest who's going to talk about a coloring book that has some great autism quotes in it, because everybody's into the coloring books right now.
Yes.
Adult
Meditative.
coloring books.
Yes,
Isn't that
Adult
wonderful.
coloring book
Yeah,
that
White
has
and I do them
autism
together.
quotes on it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be part of tomorrow's show. And don't
Great.
forget, tomorrow is a mindful day. Today is Grateful Day. And I think today we're grateful for
We're
Bryce.
grateful for you.
And I'm grateful for my husband and Brett.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much. Give your kiddos a hug for me.
And yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye
Bye-bye.
for now.